We brought Jason Holland back from
Made
Jason
the cut.
Holland Fishing. Yes, he made the cut.
Can you believe it?
He was with us for our show. We talked about baitcasters and got introduced to him and learned a few things about him, but we ran out of time, so we brought him back. We're going to talk rods. We're going to talk line. Probably talk a lot of different things today, so we're excited.
The award-winning Tennessee WildCast is on the air with the latest on hunting, fishing, boating, wildlife watching, and all things outdoors. Make welcome your host, drummer and outdoor expert novice, Jason Harmon.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tennessee WildCast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. We got a fun show for you today. We brought Jason Holland back from
Made
Jason
the cut.
Holland Fishing. Yes, he made the cut.
Can you believe it?
He was with us for our show. We talked about baitcasters and got introduced to him and learned a few things about him, but we ran out of time, so we brought him back. We're going to talk rods. We're going to talk line. Probably talk a lot of different things today, so we're excited.
I've been looking forward to this show since Jason was here the last time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm glad I made a halfway decent impression.
Yeah, heck yeah.
I think your beard's got longer.
Well, I mean, it's a work in progress. I'm cursed with a thin beard, but what I have found is I think I look better with it. My wife hates it, but she's coming around.
Okay.
So I'll just keep growing it and see where it goes.
I know where you can get some good beard butter or beard balm.
Yeah, some beard oils.
Yeah.
And cream or something.
Yeah.
Maybe filling these patches that I've got going on. Yeah, I got plenty of them. Looks like I got leprosy on my face, but hey, you know what? We're getting there.
We're getting there. Well, you know, you don't have to have a beard to fish, right?
You don't. It helps. But you don't have to. Okay. I don't know why. You just apparently you catch more fish with a beard. I didn't realize that till I grew one.
Yeah.
So I'm 42 years old and I've never had facial hair ever. I always had corporate jobs. Well, of course, COVID happened and I got stuck at home for 6 months. So I decided, hey, I'll let it grow. And so there's what you see on my face right now. Literally, I've been growing since March. So it's slow. And I've spent $1 million on beard products, which I didn't even know existed, by the way, until I started growing a beard. There's a whole culture of beard, and I'm trying to get into it. Now they laugh at me.
Yeah.
I show up with this, and they look like, I'm 14 years old, but it's okay. 42, but I'm trying. Do the best I can with what the Lord gave me.
All right. Well, let's don't run out of time this show.
Yeah, we better not.
Like I said, folks are out there listening and watching. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Last time we talked about baitcasters. We did like baitcaster basics pretty much. Ratios, drag, the magnets and whatnot and all that fun stuff. But we're going to jump into what rods those go on and then what lines work best with those and maybe talk about what you can catch this time of year. Whatever we get into, we'll get there. But
yeah, absolutely.
Let's just kind of jump off from where we left off last time.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's talk about bait casting rods. And so when it comes to bait casting rods, you got a couple different things you want to look at. Well, it's really three things. So one, you want to look at the overall length of the rod, and that's going to determine basically how far it will cast.
Okay.
So
Never thought about that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's really the overall piece of it. The longer the rod, the further the cast is going to be. Now, what you give up on a longer rod, you're going to lose accuracy. Because again, you're dealing with the 7.5 foot, 7 foot, 11 foot rod. So your casting accuracy is going to drop and diminish. Shorter the rod, the more accurate presentations you can get. And it really depends on exactly what bait that you're fishing. Sometimes, for instance, a jerk bait and you're snapping it straight down. You don't want a long rod because you'll be hitting your boat or hitting the water. So you want to shorten up the length of that rod.
Yeah.
So length's important. Then you want to talk about the power of the rod. Well, what is power of a rod supposedly really, what does that mean? All that means is the backbone, all right? That means how much force that you're going to have on that rod. So think of it this way. The heavier the power, the heavier the bait you can throw. So a quick example is if you're throwing a medium light. So let's say you got like a little small crappie rod, a little ultra light that you're fishing with. Well, that's going to throw small 16 ounce, 32 ounce baits, which you're fishing for panfish. Well, you can't go pick up a 1 ounce jig on that rod. You can. You're gonna be fighting that thing all day long just because the bait is overpowering the rod. So when you think about power of a rod, the heavier the power, the heavier the bait. The lighter the power, smaller, lighter the bait. And that's why you see pan fishing rods are usually really short, and the power is a medium light, something really light that you can throw those smaller baits.
Like that Zebco 33
You
right
got
there.
it. Well, yeah, just like the Zebco 33. It's a smaller rod, super limber, And again, you can throw, if you're bobber fishing, if you're throwing little small crappie jigs or little small crankbaits that you're creek fishing, like a MEPS, like an inline spinner, those kind of things that are really light that you need, because again, you're fishing for a fish that's got a real small mouth, so you need a small bait, small hook.
Right.
Well, you don't want to use a rod that you'd throw a big jig with, because one, it's not going to throw it. It's just the rod is way overpowering the bait.
Right.
And so when you look at ratios, it's really what I look at. Heavier the bait, heavier power rod, lighter the bait, lighter power rod. To not complicate the matter, keep it simple, stupid. If you're just getting into fishing and you're getting your kids into fishing, getting yourself into fishing, you ain't got to go spend $300 on a fishing rod. You can go to any of your local sports shops, Walmart, any of those, and pick up a really nice combo. And this is really where combos have really become important, because they take a lot of the guesswork out of it. And so the manufacturer has already went and
matched up.
You got it.
The two pieces.
Exactly
right.
Yeah. So they matched up the type of reel to the power of the rod. And so as you just get into it, when I first started buying fishing rod, I bought combos, because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I didn't have any education of what does what.
And that was on sale, right?
Well, of course it was on sale. I mean, I don't know how many fishermen that are not on a budget. Oh, let me back up. I don't know how many married guys are not on a budget, so let's clarify that. But start with a combo. And again, you ain't got to go spend $200 on a combo. You can get a really nice combo that will last you several years. Again, you can go to Walmart and pick that up, or Bass Pro Academy, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And that will help take the guesswork. But if you do want to match up, what you want to look for is in a rod, the most versatile rod that's out there is a 7-foot rod in the Baitcaster, 7-foot rod, medium heavy power, and that's usually designated on the rod. It'll be printed on the rod, and it'll have usually a medium heavy, or it'll have an M and an F, and that just stands for medium heavy. 7-foot medium heavy, and then we'll talk about action. Well, what does action mean in a rod? All action means is it's the action of the end of the rod. So you got, typically you want to have, all action does, let me clarify, is that's the rubber band effect. The more that it bends, it's called parabolic bend is the actual term. All that means is the rubber band effect. And so if you're throwing, let's say, that 1-ounce jig again, you don't want a lot of action at the tip, right? Because if not, if you do, you're going to be fighting that jig all day, because that heavy weight of the bait is going to be pulling on that rod.
Right.
So you get a stiffer rod, and you get a rod that doesn't have as much action in it.
Okay.
Well, conversely, let's say you're throwing a crankbait. Right, and you want that rubber band effect. Typically, a crankbait is going to be a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce bait, and you need that bend. When that fish bites, say, a crankbait, it's moving. You want that fish to grab it, and that they call it load. The rod loads up. All that means is it starts to bend and allows that fish to get the bait, inhale it, get it in his mouth, and before he actually starts pulling, starts setting on the hook. And so all that is determined by the action of the rod. And that, all action is just the bending of the tip. So when you're looking for if you're just getting into fishing and you want, hey, I just need a basic combo I can do pretty much everything with, get a 7-foot, medium heavy with fast action. Fast, or some of them are called moderate fast. Either one is going to be a really good all-around rod. Again, you don't have to go spend a bunch of money. And you can get a really good setup that you can fish pretty much anything with. With that setup, you can fish a Texas rig worm, you can fish a crankbait, you can fish a 1/2 ounce jig, anything along those lines. You'll be able to go out and take one rod and reel, change out their baits, and be able to adapt to whatever kind of scenario is going on. That's really the main focus. Now, if you want to get into a little bit more specifics, we'll kind of hit a couple things.
Okay.
But you got, as you get from, say, okay, I've got the basics done. I've got, now I kind of want to step my game up, or I want to get some more, like golf clubs.
Yeah.
You can use the same club all day on the golf course, and you can.
Well, yeah.
But you don't want to. Right?
No.
It's not going to be as much fun. And more importantly, is you're not going to be as effective as you possibly can.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you got to go out and buy 50 rod and reels, but typically, as you get into it and you say, hey, I'm really enjoying it, getting a couple, 3 rods is really, that's kind of the magic number. And that covers, if you get 3 rods, it covers, excuse me, pretty much the entire gamut of what you're going to throw. So,
Like a worm rod, a crankbait rod, or whatnot.
you got it. It's exactly right. And apologize for knocking a hole in your ceiling.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
We don't need that.
Nah, it's studio. We'll just keep knocking holes. But what I've got in my hand is it's designed for a frog.
75-foot rod. No.
Yeah. I have a telescoping rod that it goes high. No, I'm just kidding. I've got a frog rod in my hand. That's for, again, throwing frogs on the grass mats like nickajack or going to chick. A lot of people in the fall like to fish frogs on top of the mat. Well, here's another example where it's super heavy power. Again, we're trying to drag that fish out of all that grass. So you want a heavy power or even extra heavy. But you want a tip a little bit, but you don't want a super bendy tip. There you go. We'll get a technical term. Bendy. How do you like that? Bendy.
Yeah.
But you want a stiffer rod. What you don't want is you don't want to go out with what I call a telephone pole, which is just a broomstick. It has no bend because again, you're not going to have any ability to fight that fish. It's just way too stiff. So next rod we'll talk about is.
And I want you to explain that handle too.
Hey, well, yeah, we'll talk about handles. And we're actually going to talk about.
Let me hold that one.
If you don't mind, because if not, I'm going to knock the camera guy out, and he's going to be aggravated at me.
That's all right.
All right, next rod we're going to talk about is, as I hit the ceiling one more time, the flipping rod. So this is going to be if you're worms, jigs, or if you're flipping or pitching, all that means is just small little cast out. Say you're fishing brush or tree, fallen trees or in the grass, something like that. Again, it's going to have a good heavy power, but it's going to have more tip, say, than that frog rod. It's going to bend, that parabolic bend. It gives you more load up through the rod blank.
Gotcha.
And then, last but not least, Jason, hold that so I don't kill somebody, is the Zebco 33. I'm just kidding. There's nothing
wrong with that.
No. This one here is, they got a lot of different rods, but this one specifically is made for chatterbait.
Okay.
So vibrating jig. And again, it's got less power, right? So it's a moving bait, so you don't want as thick or as much power in it, but it's got a really good parabolic bend. And so that's just an example. They make a lot of different lure-specific rods. So if you're throwing a Ned rig, if you're throwing a Carolina rig, if you're throwing a drop shot, I mean, just the list goes on. If you want, you can start getting more specific in the rods. That they take the rod and they build everything about the rod around the specific bait. Again, that's kind of stepping it up when keep using golf clubs. You go just get a normal set of golf clubs that come with everything, but maybe you want a flop wedge, right? And so that's, again, just going to be for one specific shot. Rods are a lot the same way. It's going to be made for really one specific bait. It can be used for other things, but it's really designed for that one specific bait. And so that's kind of the progression as you really start getting into your addiction. It just goes on and on and on. But as you go through that, again, you don't have to start with all those rods. Get the basic rod. If you're going to get one, 7-foot, medium heavy, fast action. If you're going to get a couple rods, get a crankbait rod, typically a 6.5 to 7-foot crankbait rod. Get your all-purpose rod that we've been talking about, multi-purpose, whatever you want to call it. And then from there, I'd recommend you get a spinning rod. Didn't bring this to talk about today, but get a spinning rod. That's going to be for your smaller jigs, your shaky heads, drop shot fishing, all those. Anything that you're going to throw a smaller, lighter bait. And those are really good if there's a lot of fishing pressure. You're not catching anything. You're trying everything. Grab your spinning rod. Throw a small little shaky head worm. It's miserable. I get it. It's not any fun to fish. But when you got to get a bite and you're just having a real tough day, you drop. And it's called finesse fishing. All you're doing, you're dropping line size. You're just downsizing everything to get that finicky fish to bite. I will talk a couple things real quick on the other things on the rod is your handle.
Point it that way.
Hey, let's point it that way. So.
Yeah, point it that way. I think you can hold it up high enough for people to see it on camera. Perfect. Yes.
Hey, we seeing it now?
My questions were the type of handle,
Yep.
why that, and then also your eyes are much different than what's on my, say, Pro Qualifier. I got bigger eyes, so just explain that.
They will. So, cash and fishing rods, I'm a huge fan of those. They're actually the only rod that's actually made in the United States. When I say made, they actually they roll their own blank in North Carolina. They make their own grips. The eyes and the reel seats are American Tackle. So I got turned on to them because I was looking I want a rod that's made here. I'm a little maybe just, I don't know, I'm a little patriotic, and hey, as much as I can buy in, something manufactured here, it was important to me.
Yeah.
And when I found out, I'm not the only one that feels that way. Most fishermen and outdoorsmen, I mean, they want to support their local country. I mean, this is everything that we do. We want to try to support our local brothers and sisters in manufacturing. So I got turned on to casting rods because of that. But what's really cool about this rod is it's actually microfiber. And so we all know about microfiber. It's extremely durable, extremely tough, but it's very sensitive, and more importantly, it's super light. So with the casting rod, the grips are actually Kevlar. So they actually, we're all familiar with Kevlar. If you're an outdoorsman, you know Kevlar.
Definitely.
But all that is for sensitivity, number one. But what's also cool about that is extremely durable. So you think about in a boat going 70 miles an hour in that rod rack, just banging back and forth. It doesn't wear down.
It's not that foam. It's sometimes
EVA foam.
Cork handles.
Yeah, cork. Eventually, they turn around, they rot. Yeah. EVA, eventually, because it's that soft, if it gets hooked on a crankbait hooks it, we'll pull a chunk out of it. That's why I love these handles, extremely sensitive because of that. And then it's an entire system. Again, they're trying to get the most distance out of a cast, and so that's
the chatter rod.
It
all works together.
Everything's a system. They actually use the micro guides. All that means is your line guide on your rod, it gets diminished. Well, why is that important? So you think about it, when you cast a rod, that line is going through those guides. If you slow it down, and you can see it on YouTube, that line is actually spinning all the way around the line guide. So it's not going straight through, it's spinning around that line guide. So if you shrink that line guide, all that does is it maximizes and shrinks the amount of spin, so you get additional distance on your cast. You pick up about 15 to 18% by using micro guides opposed to normal guides.
Wow.
Again, we're getting into the weeds, and this is for guys that are really hardcore into it. But when you look at, especially a higher end rod, the whole rod is made for, as you said, it's a system, right? And so you're looking to get the most maximum distance out of your cast, and so that's really, without getting way too crazy with it, that's a lot of the things you want to look at is what's your grip made out of, and also what type of guides. So check out casting rods. They're absolutely fantastic. They are made here, which, if that's important to you, like it is to me,
definitely.
The quality's there, and you're not paying $500 or $600 for it, which is rods can get up there. All right. We got to keep moving.
Yeah.
We got time. We got to talk about line.
We got plenty of time.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So
I want to say this. I probably could outcast you with that Zebco. Just saying.
Well, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, you are the greatest maybe of all time. You are the GOAT, is what I hear.
Yeah.
I've actually seen it in writing that you're the GOAT.
Exactly.
So I
think I saw that too.
Award-winning.
So yeah, there's no doubt you can beat me with a Zebco. You probably throw a rock further than I.
That's why I'm asking the questions too. That's why.
Yeah, right.
All right. So we kind of talked about earlier show. We talked about the Baitcasting reel. We did a quick high level about the rods.
Exactly.
Next piece is the line. And in my opinion, line gets overlooked quite a bit. Go out, again, your local fishing store and pick up monofilament, right? That's the fishing line that's been around forever. That's what everybody's used to fishing, and it has its place. It's super cheap, and it works. But I think if you're going to if you're starting fishing, absolutely don't go buy the cheapest line you can find in the discount rack, because there's a reason why it's in the discount rack, that it's probably been there for about 5 or 6 years. And what really matters with that is that if you're like me, when I first started fishing, that's all I could afford. And so I went to the bargain bin. But every single time I was breaking over and over and over. Every time I just set a hook normal, I kept breaking off. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Well, as I got smarter and got more into it, it was the line.
And that goes for what's on your reel too. You want to change that out often, right?
Absolutely. Again, depending on how often you fish, you at minimum change it out at least once a year.
And you're not going to go broke buying line.
You're not. Go get line, and if you're going to get monofilament line, which is the least expensive, try to get a little bit high. So if you got an option between buying a spool of line for $5 or buying for $8, buy the $8 line. It's like a paintbrush. You can go buy a cheap paintbrush for about $2 and try to paint with it, and you can. Or you can go buy one that's about $12 and paint with it. You're just going to be a whole lot happier, and it's going to be a whole lot easier if you get the higher dollar brush. And there's a reason why it's higher, because there's more quality components, and it makes the process of what you're doing a whole lot easier
And
a whole
the
lot
end
better.
product is better,
That's
too.
exactly right. And you're not frustrated as much.
Yeah.
So monofilament, it really, so we'll talk, there's really 3 types of lines that's out there. Monofilament, which is what everybody kind of grew up fishing, what we're all very used to using. There is a product that's called fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon's been around almost as long as monofilament, but the freshwater fishermen really didn't get turned on it to the last 15 to 18 years. It's really been a saltwater product. And we'll kind of talk about the difference. And then there's braided line. When it first came out, it was called Superline. And they all have their specific places. If you're just getting into fishing, go get Trilene, go get Suffix line. You can pick all that up at Walmart. From a pound test, we'll talk about that real fast. You want to get, if you, on a limited budget, just get into it. You want to find that middle of the road. You don't want it super strong because you can't be able to work small crankbaits. Yet you don't want to get something that's 6-pound line if you're trying to throw a Texas rig.
Right.
All right, so you want to get that middle of the road. Typically, that 10 to 12-pound test. When you go look at it, and it's clearly marked on the box, it'll say 10, 12, 14, 15, whatever the pound test is. And all that means is it's the strength of the line. Mm-hmm. We won't go into tensile strength and bore everybody on here, but
Is that Christmas tinsel?
tensile, yeah, well, sure.
Hey, I remember that from shop class, though.
Yeah.
That's when you're pulling it apart, straight apart, right?
You got it. It's exactly right. And so you can catch a fish. I'll give you a quick story. I actually caught my personal best bass was 11 pounds and 3 ounces, and I caught it on 6-pound line. Well, if you just do just a normal mat, well, the 6-pound line shouldn't have caught and been able to bring in a over 11-pound bass. Well, it's the tensile strength, but more importantly, it's the rod and reel, it's the bend, it's the drag, the stuff we talked about in our earlier show that help it. And so
It's the skill behind that.
Yeah.
reel.
100%. Well, nobody but me could have made that happen. So let me clarify. I may be the greatest. You may be the GOAT on the mic. I'm the greatest when it comes to fishing. So
Okay.
that's way overstating my ability. Pure sarcasm.
We'll talk
for
about that on the next
Yeah,
show.
pure sarcasm for anybody that's listening.
Yeah.
But again, it's the lighter the pound test, the thinner the line.
Yeah.
And if you're crappie fishing or you're going pan fishing, you don't want 10 or 12-pound line, right? Again, you want to drop down. You want to match kind of the bait that you're throwing. If you get too heavy of a line, it'll overpower the bait that you're throwing. So to simplify, if you're going crappie fishing, you're going bluegill fishing, pan fishing, get that. Typically that 4 to 6 pounds is going to be right where you need to be. Super easy to use. It's really inexpensive. It's very manageable and will fit the kind of bait that you're throwing. If you're going bass fishing or something like that, get in that 10 to 12. If you're going to go catfishing or carp fishing or anything that's bigger, step up to that 16, 18, even 20-pound line if you're going to do monofilament. Monofilament is great. It's super stretchy, right? And that can play to your advantage. So if you're throwing a crankbait, you want that stretch, right? He's coming up 1,000,000 miles an hour behind that bait, and he's going to grab it, and he's going to turn. You want that, as we talked about on the rod, you want that rod to load up. And so the line will actually help you because when he bites it and you start to pull, it actually is stretching, giving that fish more time to consume the bait. Well, when you're worm fishing, as soon as he bites it and you feel it, he ain't got thumbs, right? So if you feel it, he's got it in his mouth. So in that case, you want, when you set the hook, you want that hook to instantly penetrate into the mouth. And so in those kind of scenarios, the stretch works actually against you.
Gotcha.
So we talked about monofilament. If you're just getting started, stick with monofilament, and we kind of talked about that. If you're into fishing and you're throwing crankbaits, monofilament works great. If you're another line that's an opportunity for crankbait fishing is actually, this is a company called Canine Fishing. They're based out of around Nashville and Goodlettsville, Tennessee.
Okay, cool.
Local company, make a fantastic product.
Go check them out.
Yeah, and this is actually what's called a copolymer. Now we're going to get down a little bit in the weeds, but not too far. All right. Copolymer is a monofilament line. It's got a fluorocarbon coating. All that means is it doesn't stretch as much as mono, and what also the other part of it is it actually floats. All right, so that's the other piece of it is actually the floating of the line. If you're fishing a crankbait, say you only want to run 2 or 3 foot deep, if you put a heavy fluorocarbon line that actually, if you put it in the water, will sink, it's actually going to pull your bait deeper than you may want it to go. So if you want to stay in that 1 to 3 foot water column, you want a line that's not going to pull that bait down.
Oh, cool.
So a monofilament or copolymer works really, really well. Check out Canine Fishing. Again, local company, make a great copolymer product.
Sure.
Move to fluorocarbon. We kind of hit on that. It's been in saltwater for 30, 40, 50 years. It's a completely different molecular structure than monofilament. It's extruded different. We're not going to go too far in the weeds. The main characteristics are it sinks, which we talked about, which is very important. Say you're fishing a deep diving crankbait and you're trying to get a plug 18 to 20 foot. You want that extra help of the line to help drive it down. That's why fluorocarbon is really good. Fluorocarbon has very, very little stretch, which can be beneficial if you're in a situation where you don't want the stretch. The other thing about fluorocarbon is it's crystal clear. So in essence, it's going to disappear when you get it in the water, which is really important. Say you're bottom fishing and the bait, the fish is going to have time to come up and look at your bait. You don't want anything that's going to hinder or take away from what the bait naturally should look like. Extremely important with fluorocarbon.
Are the red lines and the camo lines, are those fluorocarbon? Or are they something else?
No, those are going to be super lines. So monofilament and fluorocarbon, 99% of the time are going to be crystal clear.
Clear, okay.
So, funny you bring that up. They do make a product, Sunline. Huge fan of Sunline when it comes to...
I noticed from your hat.
Yeah, I got my Sunline hat on. They're based out of Japan. They're extremely big in the fishing industry. They make, in my opinion, one of the best lines. But fluorocarbon, as we talked about, typically clear. Well, in this product, they actually make, it's called a flipping line. So, I got my rubber band on here. So
That flipping line.
Yeah, there you go.
Hold on.
Now we got jokes. So you probably can't see it on camera, and of course, if you're listening, you can't see it. But it actually has a coating on there that's chartreuse, so it's real bright green.
Yeah.
And so you take a situation where, say, you're flipping trees, and most of your bites are coming when you flip it, and that bait is slowly floating to the bottom, and that fish is grabbing it. Well, if you don't have bottom contact or you're not feeling that bait, you're not going to know that you got a fish. So what you do is called line watching. And so you flip it in and you're actually staring at your line to see if it jumps while it slowly flutters down. That's when you know you have a bite. You'll a lot of times never even feel that bite. But if you got a flipping line or a line that has got some type of coloring on it, you can see that much easier, obviously. And so when you flip it in and it's fluttering down, you'll see that line jump, and then you'll know to set the hook. Jason has started the music, so that means I need to shut up. One thing that we've not hit on real quick. Braided fishing line. It's super thin, super strong. So this is actually 65-pound braid, but it's an equivalent to 17-pound mono. Great for if you're fishing grass, you're trying to throw a frog over grass. It gives you a lot more strength than you could with monofilament or fluorocarbon. Very high level. Again, got some more questions, always go to YouTube. They got some great videos on there to help you figure it out. But braided fishing line, if you need something really strong and really thin. Fluorocarbon if you need it to sink. Monofilament if you're just going fishing.
Braid's hard to cast too, harder to cast, right? Would you say that?
I've
experienced that.
Well, the problem with braid is it digs in.
Okay.
So if you set the hook, that braid is so thin it actually digs into the spool, so it's a little harder to get out.
Yeah.
But if you're fishing grass, you got to have it.
I got you.
And it gives you that extra power that you need to make it happen and get the fish out.
At Jason Holland Fishing.
Check me out, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I just, thank God for a 17-year-old daughter, I now have a TikTok account.
Whoa!
Huge. I don't know if you guys know it, but I'm massive. I'm huge. Absolutely huge.
Okay, well, I don't... go check him out. Can they ask questions online?
Please ask
Awesome.
any questions you got.
Cool. All right, well, go check him out. Keep coming back, tuning into this show. Don, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
This has been fun.
I learned a lot more tonight, too, Jason.
Well, good.
I appreciate it.
Hopefully left a little nugget of pearl.
Yeah.
Somebody can
we'll have to bring you back because next we got to tie on the hook.
Come on. Bring me back.
So we'll do that. We'll bring you back. But anyway, we're going to run out of time. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected with TWRA by visiting our website at tnwildlife.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.